Hi guys, so we're here in Grow HQ again in the school garden, and we are beautiful sunny afternoon. Just doing a quick check-in on our beds. So we've got plenty of activity, even though it's relatively early yet. So if you have a look over here, this is where we planted the spud bed, or the spuds rather, in the spud bed. And you can see that they're starting to come up. So we planted three. All three of those have sprouted, which is fantastic. Over this side, these two have nothing after coming here yet, but might have been planted just a little bit deeper than the others. And there's nothing really we need to do here. There's a process called earthing up with potatoes, which is just about covering over the kind of sprouts as they come out of the ground, to protect them from the frost, and also it forces the plant to get longer, which means you get more spuds. But I think it's a little bit early to do that yet, so we're going to come back to that in a couple of days time, or maybe a week's time or so. So we're just going to leave them as they are. We're very happy with those. We've had some frosts over the last week or so at night time, so just keep an eye on the weather forecast. If there's a very heavy frost, it can actually kill off those little potato plants as they're coming out of the soil. So you can cover them with some of the fleece that you would have got with your school kit, but hopefully with the weather starting to warm up over the next few weeks, that's not going to be an issue. So this is where we did our peas and our broad beans. So if we take this off, this is some of the fleece, and we've had this on it. It's really not about heat so much, or creating heat for the plants, as keeping the pigeons away. We have a terrible problem with pigeons on this site, and this just keeps them off it. So these are doing really well. Our broad beans are in very good nick. So these are our broad bean plants, and you remember we did a couple of little extra ones in the end of the row there. And these, really happy with these. They're exactly where they should be. The peas are doing okay. A couple of ones in the middle here are a little bit slower. And the only thing I would suggest doing here with this bed is just giving it a little bit of a weed. So we have a little hoe here, and just kind of going up and down like that, just to kind of get rid of any of those weeds. Very quick little job. Because like most vegetable plants, they don't really like weed competition so much. So just keep the bed weeded. And in this kind of a day, it's a perfect day to do a job like this with a hoe, because when you upset the weeds a little bit and unsettle them like that, and then they'll just kind of shrivel up in the sun and die off on you. So that's all we need to do, and we're going to cover that as well back over when we're finished. So if we move along, then there's nothing we need to do with the peas and beans for now. They will need support in again maybe a week or so. We'll come back and do another video to cover that off, but for now they're happy. In here we've got our salad leaves. These are doing really well. So we sowed 4 little rows of these oriental greens. This is mustard, and it's doing really well. You could even try having a little taste of these at this stage, because they're absolutely delicious. Really bit of heat in them, really fiery taste. They look absolutely gorgeous. And again, what we want to do very carefully is just kind of hoe or weed along the rows, or in between the rows rather, just to keep them kind of nice and weed free, so that your salad leaves don't have any competition. There's a couple of little weed seeds in there we could deal with as well. But otherwise they're looking really good, and these are not very far off being able to harvest from. So you only want them to get about that size, and then we'll harvest them. So again, maybe in a week's time. And then our radishes are doing really well here. The radish leaf is, when it's this size, when it's nice and small, you can use it in salad leaves. When it gets any bigger than this, it tends to get the leaves get a bit hairy. They're not so nice to eat, but I've heard of people making soup from radish tops as well, which is really good. But at this stage, what we need to do is thin them out a bit, because they need to be spaced about 3 to 5 centimeters apart. So if you think about the size of a radish, you need them to be about that size. So you need to be kind of fairly brutal about this if you want to get in nice and close there. Do you see the way there's 3 of them really close together there? And that's no good to you. They need to be kind of given the space to grow on properly. So that space between here and here is about what you need to be aiming. Then you're just thinning out the rest which means taking them out and discarding them. So it feels a bit weird when they look so lovely, but if you don't do this, they're not going to turn into radishes that'll be big enough to eat. So we'll take out that one, and we'll take out that one, and so you could of course use all of these tops for, don't let them go to waste, use them for a soup or use them in a salad or something like that. There's a little tiny radish almost ready to eat, look at that, beautiful little thing. And you do exactly the same thing with carrots, incidentally. You sow them quite kind of thickly and then you thin them out along the row, and you end up with the perfect space in between them so that they've got the space they need to grow. Even though it feels a little bit brutal at this stage, it's all for the greater good. That's about right. And there, yeah. So that's it, and we'll bring these into the kitchen to use them in a soup or a salad. So that's that bed, that's looking really, really good. Delighted with that. And again, don't forget with these, when we do harvest these salad leaves, we can sow again because they're so quick growing. Final bed then is parsnips, and then we'll be sowing our carrots as well in about a week's time, I think. Parsnips are really slow to germinate. They take about 3 to 4 weeks depending on the weather, and very, very hard to tell with parsnips which is the parsnips and which is the weeds. So you're as well to let them sort of grow on, and then we'll show you what they look like. But for now, very hard to tell whether these are parsnips. These ones here could be parsnips, but they could also be weeds. So we're going to let them grow for a little while longer, and then we'll sow our parsnips in, or our carrots in there in about a week's time. So it's not doing too badly, even though it's been quite cold over the last while. Everything's growing well, and we'll check in again next week.